Neuroticism is one of those words that gets thrown around in casual conversation as a synonym for being high strung or perhaps a bit difficult to deal with. But from a clinical perspective, we're looking at something much deeper and more structural within the personality. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student, and I see the impact of high neuroticism every single day in my office, and if I'm being honest, in my own mirror. It's a personality disposition characterized by a tendency to experience negative emotions, anxiety, depression, anger, and a general sense of vulnerability. But it isn't just a mood, it's a filter through which you see the entire world. If your brain is a smoke detector, a neurotic brain is one that's so sensitive it goes off because you're just making toast. We've talked about the definitions before, but I want to dive into how this actually interacts with other conditions. We see a massive overlap with trauma survivors and the neurodivergent community, specifically those with ADHD or on the autism spectrum. When your brain is already processing sensory information or social cues differently, the world can feel inherently threatening, which pushes that neuroticism dial way up. I also see it frequently in folks with generalized anxiety disorder, and certainly with OCD. There is an interesting distinction to make here between OCD and OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Often, OCPD individuals are actually less neurotic in the clinical sense because their behaviors are egocentric. They feel like their way is the right way and everyone else is wrong. But people with OCD or standard high neuroticism are often in a state of ego dystonic distress. They know their thoughts are irrational, but they can't stop the spiral. I've noticed a strong link with social anxiety too. Bipolar type 2 is another area where this shows up, though I'm always very careful with that diagnosis. Type 2 looks so different from type 1. It's more about those long, crushing depressive states and hypomania that can feel like extreme irritability or intense, vibrating anxiety rather than the euphoric mania people see in movies. I take my time with that diagnosis because I want to ensure we aren't just looking at a high neuroticism baseline or a complex trauma response. Most of my clients who struggle with this don't just have an adjustment disorder, it's usually a layered presentation. So, how do we actually adjust this? How do we move the needle? The first and most vital step is challenging those thoughts, which I know sounds like a Pinterest quote, but in practice, it's grueling work. It's about catching the mind in the act of jumping to the absolute worst case scenario. When you're neurotic, you do this even when things are going well. It's like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, and when it doesn't drop fast enough, you go looking for it. You have to ask yourself, is this actually true? Is there a shred of evidence for this fear? Or is my brain just bored and looking for a problem to solve? I had to do this myself recently. And I'll share this because I think it's important to see that even therapists struggle with the irrationality of their own nervous systems. When I was applying for my clinical licenses in Virginia and DC, the process was a nightmare of bureaucracy. You take the clinical exam, which is stressful enough, but then you have to submit years of logs and paperwork to the board. My process took way longer than my peers. I did my residency hours in private practice, which meant my documentation was different from people working in huge state hospitals. I had thousands of clinical hours, but fewer ancillary hours because my paperwork was efficient. I remember seeing my friends get their license numbers in 48 hours, while my application sat in pending for days. My brain went to the darkest place possible. I was convinced the board thought I was a fraud. I thought they were going to reject my 3 years of hard work because of a filing technicality. I stayed up staring at the ceiling, convinced I'd have to start my career over. I had to stop and talk myself down. I had to ask, did I do anything wrong? No. Did I have the hours? Yes. Is it realistic that a government board would just ban me because I worked in a different setting? No, they've seen private practice hours before. I was only 3 days behind my friends, which, in the grand scheme of a 30-year career, is nothing. But in that moment of high neuroticism, it felt like a life or death verdict. You have to create distance from these emotions. Mindfulness is a term that's been watered down, but the core of it, detachment, is your best weapon. You don't have to react to every feeling. If you send a text and the person doesn't reply, Your neuroticism will tell you they hate you, you're annoying, and the friendship is over. You have to step back and say, I am feeling anxious right now. That is a sensation in my chest. It is not a fact about my social standing. You can admit you're uncomfortable, but then choose to lean into a different emotion. Maybe you're also tired. Focus on the fatigue, go watch a show, cook a meal. Don't let the spike of anxiety dictate the entire evening. Another huge factor is physical stabilization. I cannot stress this enough. If your body is in chaos, your mind will be too. Sleep, diet, and exercise are not just for fitness. They are the chemical foundation of emotional stability. Too much caffeine is a disaster for a neurotic person. You're essentially pouring fuel on a fire that's already burning. If you're underslept, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that tells you, hey, calm down, it's just an email, is essentially offline. You become all amygdala, all threat response. You also need to reduce the daily chaos in your environment. If your room is a mess, your fridge is empty, and your to-do list is 40 items long, you are triggering your own neuroticism. A disorganized space reflects and reinforces a disorganized mind. Make your to-do list small and realistic. Give yourself fewer unnecessary decisions to make. This is why some of the most successful, high-stress people wear the same outfit every day. They are preserving their cognitive energy for things that actually matter. Now, for some people, limiting overthinking doesn't work through sheer willpower alone. Sometimes the engine is running too fast. If that's you, you might need to process it out loud with a professional or look into medication to help lower that baseline. But you can also try the worry window. Give yourself 15 minutes at 5 p.m. to absolutely spiral. Google everything, imagine the worst, cry, whatever. But when the timer goes off, you have to move on. You have to break the reassurance loop too. This is a big one. We all want to ask our friends, do you think I'm okay? Did I sound stupid? But every time you ask for reassurance, you're telling your brain that it can't handle the uncertainty on its own. You're feeding the monster. When I was waiting for my license, I wanted to call every therapist I knew and ask if they thought I was in trouble. I realized that even if they said you're fine, I'd only feel better for an hour and then I'd be back in the loop. I had to sit with the discomfort of not knowing. You also have to face small fears gradually. Avoidance is the primary fuel for anxiety. If you're scared of social judgment, don't go to a massive party yet, but do go to a cafe and make small talk with the person behind the counter. Just a simple, I like your shop's vibe, or how's your day going? It proves to your nervous system that you can interact with the world and not die. Finally, practice grounded self-compassion. So many of you are so incredibly mean to yourselves. I hear it in our calls, this constant, brutal inner critic. You try to fix it with toxic positivity, telling yourself you're a superstar, but your brain knows that's a lie. Instead, try balanced thinking. I messed up that presentation, and it's embarrassing, but I've done good work before, and I will again. That is grounded. That is compassionate. And stop assuming you know what others are thinking. You treat your guesses as facts. You assume someone is judging you or that a coworker has a grudge. Unless they tell you, it's just a guess. Treat it as a hypothesis, not a truth. Most of the time, people are too worried about their own lives to be thinking about your mistakes. I've seen so many of you isolate yourselves because of these dark assumptions. Look at the evidence. Is there evidence they're actually mad? Or could they just be having a bad day that has nothing to do with you? Most of the time, it's the latter. Lastly, cut down on the post-interaction analysis. We've all done it, replaying a conversation for 3 hours, cringing at a joke that didn't land. Set a 5-minute limit for reflection, then deliberately shift your focus. Don't let your brain spiral. I have so much more I want to say about this, but I have a full schedule today and I need to get to it. I didn't want to wait to make this because I know how much some of you are struggling with these patterns. It takes time to rewire these neural pathways, but it is possible. You don't have to be a victim of your own disposition. Be gentle with yourselves, but be firm with your boundaries. I hope this helps even one of you feel a little more in control today. Please like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and I'll be back with a part 2 soon to cover the rest of my list. I'll see you in the next one.